The Woman in the Yard is a supernatural slash psychological movie that came out over this past weekend. I didn't have a chance to review it while I was visiting family. This movie is directed by Jaime Collet-Serra. You might recognize that name from movies like Black Adam and Run All Night, Unknown. This film stars Danielle Deadwyler. She plays a grieving mother who is trying to get over the loss of her husband in a terrible accident. She's trying to take care of her two kids in their house that they have in this secluded piece of land, and then all of a sudden that grief turns to fear when there's a mysterious woman that appears outside sitting in a chair. This woman is dressed in all black and she's just kind of there in the yard, and obviously that creates a very creepy and unsettling experience. The more they try to figure out what this woman wants, the more dangerous it appears their life becomes inside the house. I will say this for The Woman in the Yard, it's certainly a film that seems to have a lot of people talking, and I do think it's one of those type of movies. It's going to be divisive and polarizing, but it's also going to spark a lot of interesting discussions. The concept is very simple and kind of stupid when you think about it. Just in and of itself, of someone sitting in a chair and just staring at this house all day. Like, she stares menacingly at the house for like 80% of the movie. And there's absolutely a part of my brain that keeps thinking, because like as the movie goes on, her chair kind of gets closer to the house. So part of me is just thinking like she's waiting until the people in the house look away, and then she's like scooting her chair closer. And the imagery of that is like frying my brain, I'm not gonna lie. Having said that, they do milk it for what it's worth, and they do create something that feels kind of creepy and effective despite how stupid it might be. Part of the reason that the concept is creepy is that I can't believe this woman would be outside in a hot summer day wearing all black, just sitting in a chair. Like, girl, are you not hot? Part of me is wondering, like, is the real creep factor the fact that she might be sweaty and stanky under all that? Like, I just know it smells bad in there. Got no AC, no fan, no nothing, just sweating, covered in black head to toe. Like, I don't know, that just feels a little bit more scary than the actual, like, premise of the movie. What really helps the premise of the movie is this idea of grief and tragedy and depression, and even a little bit about suicide. I think what helps the movie sell all of this is the performance of Danielle Deadwyler. She is really, really great in this movie. There's a lot of different emotions that she has to convey, and she has to cycle through all of them, including the grief and the depression and terror and everything as the situation becomes more uncomfortable. I also want to shout out Jaime Collet-Serra because he does some interesting things with his direction in this film that adds a little bit more flair to the proceedings. More importantly, some dynamic camera work that does help to elevate the scenery and elevate the cinematography beyond what you would expect from a normal Blumhouse movie. Mostly, I just respect this movie because it has a vision. You know, whatever your interpretation of the vision is, and you might not like it, and there are probably valid reasons not to like it. At the very least, it's ambiguous and ambitious in certain ways, and I do love the fact that it has something to say. It's at least trying to say something, and I feel like that is saying something. Unfortunately, this movie, while it aims for the stars, it doesn't really come close to that, and sometimes its reach extends beyond its capabilities. Instead of hitting the stars, it's more like it gets into the lower atmosphere, and then some parts of the movie do fizzle out, so it does feel like it comes back to earth in a little bit. I really do have to work on my space and sky analogies and metaphors. Like, I feel like that's something I should work on for future jokes and puns for the show. Putting all of that shit aside, the movie has a problem. One of the big problems it has is the characters. The characters are just very difficult to get into in this movie, and most of them honestly are kind of inherently unlikable. We're gonna leave the little girl out of this because honestly she's just a little girl and there's not really a big reason to dislike her in the movie, so I'm gonna put her aside for a second. But especially the two main principal characters, the mother and the son in this movie, like they're just really hard to really invest in and like, and I'm not saying everybody in a movie has to be likable all the time. So many times when the mother is speaking in this movie or when she's trying to be a mother and failing, I'm like looking at her and I'm like, okay, why are you such a cunt? Likewise, when the son is speaking and he's saying a lot of shit and he's doing what you would expect a son would do in these situations, I'm looking at him and I'm like, more understandable phrasing, but why are you such a cunt? I also feel like this movie suffers from really bad pacing. The middle section of the movie drags itself down to hell. It just feels like there's not a lot of forward story progression in the middle act of this movie. There's just not a lot of scares, there's not a lot of thrills, and a lot of the ones that you do get are very cheap. I do have to warn people, this is not really a scary movie in the way that you want it to be. This movie is much more psychological, and to be honest, when it leans into the psychological aspects of its story, I feel like that's when the movie is at its best. When the movie is trying to play this supernatural threat up and they're trying to like make it bigger than what it is and they're trying to make it a scary movie, that's when the movie really falls flat because most of the shit is not really scary. Not only is it not scary, but it just feels like the middle section of the movie, there's not a lot that actually happens on screen. I also feel like the third act kind of goes batshit insane and loses its mind mind, not always in a good way. The third act of this movie feels very incoherent. It feels like it loses focus. There is a lot of information, both visually and narratively, that they try to throw at you in the third act. And they throw it at you with such rapid fire speed that it just kind of feels hard to attach yourself to any direction that the movie is trying to pull you in, because it feels like the movie's trying to pull you in every direction all at once. Sometimes when you have a slow burn movie like this, you can feel like, okay, but they're saving it for the third act because the third act is gonna really like blow our minds with this great reveal or whatever. The problem with this third act is they try to throw too much information at you, and it ends up confusing you and not making you more excited to talk about it. I also will say this, the movie has kind of mixed messaging. There are certain ways that you can interpret the messaging in this movie and you're gonna get pissed off about it. There are other ways that you can interpret the messaging and you can be like, oh, well, I kind of see what they were going for. So I do think the end of this movie is very divisive, very polarizing. Even I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. The only thing I can really say is that I respect the fact that they had the balls to go there, because this is not really a usual typical direction for movies like this. The Woman in the Yard was okay at times. I don't know how to feel about it, but I'm gonna leave this one in the Fortress of Solitude. Tell me, have you seen it? What did you think about it? What are your interpretations on the end of the movie? Put that in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.